Wow, first snow Canada.
The first flakes of winter often arrive like a reminder, pretty, seasonal, expected. This time, the reminder turned into a wake-up call. Over the weekend, an unusually strong system swept from the central provinces into the heart of Canada's most populated corridor, dropping heavy, moisture-laden snow where leaves still clung to trees and where many people had not switched their cars over to winter readiness. The result: miles of slick highways, hundreds of collisions, tens of thousands of customers plunged into darkness, and a cascade of disruptions that rippled through cities and small towns alike. Tonight we walk you through what happened in Toronto, what unfolded in Montreal, how the wider province of Ontario was affected, and what the aftermath means for communities and the coming season. Let's begin in Toronto, where the storm arrived with a kind of blunt early season force that surprised many. Overnight and into the Monday morning commute, the city recorded measurable accumulations, enough that airport weather reports showed near double-digit totals at one major site. Streets that had been ordinary the night before were buried in slush and compacted snow. The official measurements in central locations ranged from light accumulations to roughly 5 to 10 centimeters, while surrounding suburbs saw higher amounts. That may not sound like a lot to long-time winter residents, but the timing was everything. Leaves still on trees collected the heavy, wet snow, creating extra weight and vulnerability. Many drivers were still on all-season tires, and heavy, sticky snow can transform routine drive into a perilous one in minutes. The provincial police recorded hundreds of traffic incidents across the Greater Toronto area within a short window. Many of them were minor fender benders and single-vehicle slides, but collectively they clogged emergency services and gridlocked stretches of major arteries during a peak commuting hour. The images you saw on camera were familiar: lines of headlights crawling through whiteout-like conditions, tow trucks retrieving stranded vehicles, transit vehicles laboring up icy grades. Municipal crews responded quickly. Salt spreaders, plows, and sidewalk machines were redeployed to high-priority corridors. Key bridges and transit routes were treated, and teams worked through the night to keep main thoroughfares passable. But in neighborhoods where clearance schedules hadn't yet fully shifted into winter mode, side streets and sidewalks remained treacherous. Airport operations felt the pressure too. Ground crews worked continuously to dice planes and keep runways clear as visibility dipped and departure times shifted. Passengers experienced delays. Some flights were canceled or rerouted, and waiting rooms filled with commuters watching departure boards change. For many travelers, the storm turned a regular weekend trip into a logistical headache: late arrivals, missed connections, and unplanned nights in terminals. One of the reasons the situation escalated so quickly was how the heavy snow interacted with the urban environment. Trees that typically shrug off a light dusting of snow suddenly carried additional mass because the leaves were still present. Branches bowed and, in several cases, snapped and fell. That in turn created hazards on roads and sometimes brought down power lines. Power companies reported outages in pockets across the region. While many homes regained the electricity within hours, several neighborhoods experienced longer interruptions that stretched into the evening. Officials emphasized that most collisions were avoidable and urged drivers to adjust habits immediately. The repeated recommendations were simple but vital: slow down, leave extra space between vehicles, clear snow and ice from your entire vehicle, including the roof, and, where possible, postpone non-essential travel until roads are plowed and treated. For those who hadn't yet installed winter tires, the message was blunt: you've missed the easy window. Waiting until sidewalks and driveways are full of snow will only create rushes at tire shops and raise risks on the road. As the storm moved through, weather patterns spawned lake effect bands in nearby areas, intensifying snowfall locally. Places like Barrie and some southeast zones saw concentrated bursts that dumped significantly more than the city center. In those pockets, forecasts predicted accumulations in the range of 15 to 30 centimeters by the following morning. Those are accumulations that quickly overwhelm local arteries, overwhelm small plow fleets, and force closures of rural roads where traction is limited and help is farther away. Now shift the lens to Montreal, where the same system brought a harsh mix of snow, sleet, and freezing rain. The storm hit the city mid-Sunday and deepened through the night, producing heavier totals in many neighborhoods than initially expected. In the most affected sectors, residents woke up to meters of white, While the wet nature of the snow combined with leaves on trees produced severe stress on branches and power lines. The weight of that wet snow was the key factor. Trees that usually stand strong in a flurry found limbs snapping, and when limbs fell onto infrastructure, the consequences were immediate. By midday, hundreds of thousands of customers across southern Quebec were without power. That number peaked in the hundreds of thousands, affecting both dense urban blocks and outlying towns. Emergency crews were dispatched en masse to prioritize hospitals, shelters, and essential services, while restoration timelines stretched into days for some outlying areas where access was limited and damage significant. Utility crews worked in freezing, windy conditions, often in darkness, to repair down lines and replace damaged equipment. In many neighborhoods, residents were advised to conserve heat and power where possible, and warming centers were opened for those in urgent need. The human stories mounted quickly. Schools announced closures as snowplows struggled to clear bus routes. Commuters were told to stay home where possible. Social media filled with images and videos of entire streets plunged into darkness, of community members helping each other shovel and share generators, and of local businesses running on backup power or remaining closed. A multi-vehicle collision on a key overpass south of the city involved nearly 24 vehicles and resulted in a flurry of emergency responses. The cold and the complexity of the pileup compounded the strain on first responders. Montreal's public works teams were operating under difficult conditions. The mixed precipitation made plowing and salt application more complicated, while the city's stormwater systems were taxed as melting and freezing cycles produced localized flooding in low-lying areas. Melting snow from heavier bands combined with freezing overnight temperatures produced thin layers of black ice on many secondary roads, catching people off guard. Quebec's officials were vocal and urgent in their advice: stay off the roads if possible, make contingency plans for power loss, and seek help if you are vulnerable or housebound. For individuals relying on electrically powered medical devices, the outages represented a particularly acute risk, and local authorities prioritized them for emergency power and shelter services. Back in Ontario, the fallout felt far beyond any single city. Rural municipalities, already stretched by seasonal work, now faced collapsed temporary structures, broken greenhouse frames, and blocked farm access. Early harvested fields with equipment and tarps in place found those coverings torn and gnawed by wind and weight, jeopardizing late-season operations. Some small farms reported roofs damaged and ventilation systems threatened by the sudden freeze, and that has implications for livestock, crop storage, and the early stages of autumn harvest recovery. Construction sites across multiple municipalities also suffered. Scaffolding and tarps that protect ongoing projects ripped and froze, and cement pours scheduled for the week were delayed. In dense residential zones, homeowners grappled with sagging gutters and downspouts, and many had to call contractors for emergency repairs when evolving thaw-freeze patterns weakened materials. The transportation picture showed a patchwork of impacts. While major highways saw concentrated closure and reopening activity, a notable stretch of a key east-west corridor was shut when a jackknife commercial truck blocked lanes and created cascading backups. That closure rippled into regional traffic and logistics, delaying freight and impacting supply chains for perishable goods. The ripple effect highlighted how a single weather event can quickly extend into economic and operational strains across sectors. Utilities, insurers, and municipal managers began tallying costs within a day. Overtime for snow crews, emergency salt reorders, extra equipment rentals, and the volume of claims for broken trees and storm damage started to add up. City budgets, which often allocate winter resources based on historical patterns, found themselves obliged to shift funding sooner than planned. The early costs for salt, overtime, and emergency contracting may reverberate through municipal planning discussions later in the season. But beyond budgets and logistics, the storm also served as a real-time test of community resilience. In many neighborhoods, the response was immediate and neighborly. Videos circulated of people clearing paths for elderly neighbors, of community centers opening as temporary relief hubs, and of local businesses offering coffee and warmth to stranded commuters. Emergency responders, utility crews, and municipal workers worked long shifts in dangerous conditions, and across the board there were stories of courage and teamwork, from first responders extracting drivers from snowbanks to utility line workers working on frozen poles to restore light and heat. This storm also raises longer-term questions about preparation. The climate backdrop for these early, heavy events is complicated. Meteorologists note that transitions between seasons have become more volatile in recent years, a system that brings warm, moisture-rich air into contact with cold Arctic flows produces heavy, wet snow earlier than historical norms. For municipalities, that means municipal winter operations may need to be more flexible for homeowners and drivers. It means reassessing seasonal routines like tire changes, tree trimming, and emergency kit preparedness. Insurance companies were quick to remind drivers and homeowners of common pitfalls. Rear-end collisions, lane change incidents, and single-vehicle slides typically spike during this transitional phase. And insurers urge caution and the installation of winter tires when temperatures frequently drop below the single-digit Celsius threshold. Insurers also noted an uptick in claims for property damage from trees and roof stress following early heavy with snow. For those making claims, documentation, photos, timestamps, and details is crucial to a smoother process. So what should people do right now? Several clear steps emerge from the storm response that apply to anyone in affected regions. First, if you haven't already, fit your vehicle with winter tires. They make a measurable difference in grip, braking, and lane control. Second, keep an emergency kit in your car, warm clothing, blankets, a flashlight, a charged power bank, non-perishable snacks, a small shovel, and some grit or cat litter for traction. Third, keep your home ready for outages. Maintain a small battery-powered radio, have backup power plants for essential medical equipment, and keep water and non-perishable foods on hand for a few days. Fourth, when heavy snow is forecast and trees still have leaves, consider trimming vulnerable branches well before storms, because prevention is far less costly and dangerous than repair.